Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Look at the beast I've got on the table today. This is a Magnum Research Desert Eagle chambered in 50 Action Express. It's a beast of a gun and it chambers a beast of a round. This particular one is in silver or stainless and black. It's an alloy frame. But this particular Desert Eagle gun itself is available in a couple different calibers. It's available in 50 AE, 44 Magnum, and 357 Magnum. And the gun is in wide varieties of colors, styles, gold tiger stripe, all black, all stainless. There's a huge variety of variations that you can get this particular gun in. Before I pick the gun up though, I've got some ammo I want to show you. This is a sample of a few of the rounds that are available out there. This is the 50 AE, which this particular gun is chambered for. This one here is a 44 Magnum, which is an available chambering for this gun, and it is also a common powerful revolver cartridge. This is 357 Magnum, another powerful cartridge that's available chambering for this gun, and is a common revolver self-defense round. Of course, we have the venerable 45 and the 10mm. And all of these in their own rights are very powerful rounds. But to give you an example of the power, the 50 AE comes in around 1450 foot-pounds of energy. And the 10mm, which is considered to be a very powerful round, comes in around 700 in a hotter load. This is an Underwood. And I'll put various quotes for each of the powers of these rounds on the description. I don't want to sit here and read a bunch of numbers to you. And I'll turn them around, you can see the relative case heights. So you can see that the 50 AE is a really large cartridge when you compare it to revolver cartridges that normally cannot be chambered in a semi-auto pistol because they won't fit in the grip. So you straighten it out a little bit. So overall, you've got a really massive cartridge in a semi-auto handgun with massive amounts of power. So once again, before I put these down, we've got a 50 AE, 44 Magnum, 357 Magnum, 45, and a 10mm. So I'm going to set the ammo aside and I want to show you the case. So here's a spent case from it. Oh, what do we got in there? A 9mm actually fits entirely inside the spent case of the 50 AE. That gives you a really good example of just how big this round is. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get rid of all the ammo, get it away from the table, pick the gun up, and show you more about the gun itself. I've actually set the gun aside for a moment to show you the box it comes in, because it actually comes in a fairly nice box. It's got the Magnum Research logo on it. It's a fairly robust box. It is lockable, so it's got the tabs to lock it. And what it comes with inside is a foam interior, the eggshell foam, a little DVD on care and feeding of your Desert Eagle. I haven't watched this yet, but I'm going to have to and see what exactly this is. And of course your typical warranty paperwork. Join the NRA, which hopefully if you're not a member of the NRA, you will join the NRA because they help defend our Second Amendment rights. Order form for parts and accessories, which can also be gotten on their website. The Made in America. The Desert Eagle has moved around over its lifespan back and forth between Israel, America, and they're currently being made in America. This particular gun was made in America. Some instructions on how to shoot the Desert Eagle, along with some samples of grip and stance, and how to care for the exterior. And a couple warnings about not trying to polish it because it could remove the various finishes. And then this little unique tool, which is used if you need to remove the bolt or the firing pin. This is not needed to take the gun down for service. I'll take it down for a field strip and cleaning, I'll show you that. But if you need to further disassemble it, need to take the bolt out to clean it, then this little tool that comes with it, it was underneath the foam. And underneath the foam also is the ever-present gun lock. And I'm sure if you've got a safe, you've got a little basket full of these things. If you don't have a safe, then that's a way to at least keep it away from children. So it does come in a decent box with a little bit of entertainment while you're waiting to get to the range. So that you've got a place to store it, a place to transport it, and the gun also comes inside of that plastic bubble wrap, and it was soaked with oil. It was just covered in oil. So let me get the gun back out So I've got it here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it back and show you that it's unloaded. And one thing you're going to find with a Desert Eagle, you don't do anything gentle with this gun. Everything you do with this gun, do it like you mean it, because everything is stiff on this gun. The gun is unloaded. But you notice you grab the slide with a full hand grip. This is not a two-finger pullback, especially if the hammer is in an uncocked position. And it does have a thumb safety. And of course we have an empty magazine. An empty enormous magazine. Holds 7 rounds. It's a steel mag. The gun only comes with 1. And it does have a thumb safety, which takes a decent amount of force to move it, and a definitive click when it moves. Actually more of a thunk than a click. Overall, the gun has the profile of a 1911, just beefed up. It has a Picatinny style rail on the bottom and a Weaver style rail on the top, which is an odd combination. Neither of those rails moves. Of course, the bottom one, you'd be used to it not moving. The top one does not move either. The barrel is fixed, and the slide, as you saw when I pulled it open to show that it was unloaded, the slide is the part of the back that moves underneath it. So if you mount a red dot or some sort of an optic on either of these rails, they're not going to be involved in the moving of the slide or the recoil impulse, which should help the survivability of an optic on a gun like this. As you can see, this one does have the integral muzzle brake. It's part of the barrel. It's not an add-on, it's actually built into the entire barrel assembly. And that muzzle brake on a cartridge this powerful is actually quite helpful. It really made the recoil on this surprisingly controllable for the power of the cartridge. There was no doubt we were firing something big, no doubt that it was a very powerful round, but it wasn't abusive. The muzzle brake really kept the muzzle flip under control and reduced the felt recoil to manageable territories, into like a stronger 44 Magnum or something along those lines. So if you're looking at a Desert Eagle in 50 AE, you may want to seriously consider one of the variations that has the muzzle brake. This particular one being the stainless frame, it's also going to be easier to clean that muzzle brake without damaging the finish. Stainless slide, actually I should have said. It'll be easier to clean that without damaging the finish. The sights on this are blackout sights, and they are both dovetailed, front and rear. So you can see that it's dovetailed front and rear. So they are replaceable. And we probably will replace these because I have a hard time seeing the blackout sights. And we were able to get reasonable grouping with this gun, but I think if we'd actually been able to see the sights clearly, we could have probably done a lot better with it. So we're going to try some fiber optic sights and see if that helps make it a little easier to see and pick up. You'll notice the safety is also ambidextrous. And if I show you the other side of the gun, here's your takedown lever and the Magnum Research, Pillager, Minnesota, USA. And as far as choices for sights, there's not a lot available for the gun. And for some reason, the US-made barrels and the Israeli-made barrels, the sights are different. So you have to be careful when you're buying sights for this gun that you get the sights that match the version of the barrel you've got. And most of them will say will not work on the US or US only, which is kind of an interesting combination. A few of the other things before I take the gun apart, it's got a full wraparound rubber grip. It goes all the way around, and it does have finger grooves. So when you get a hold of this thing, your fingers fit right into those grooves. But you'll notice that my hand is very extended to get a hold of this, and I can't even barely touch my finger and my thumb. So when you grab a hold of this gun, it is just a massive grip. But with those finger grooves, the wraparound rubber helps absorb the recoil and helps control the flip. And it's got an enormous beaver tail. You see there's room for another entire finger under that before you reach the end of the beaver tail. Hammer bite on this is probably non-existent with that long beaver tail. Now there may be different variations with shorter beaver tails because again this gun comes in at least a dozen if not more variations in styles and colors. All of them equally massive, even the 44 Magnum and the 357. Now you can change that by changing just the barrel and the magazine, you can change this gun to 44 Magnum without having to change any other components. When you go to 357 Magnum from 50 or 44, there's a couple other components you need to change. So from a caliber conversion perspective, there's flexibility up and down, and to go to 44 Magnum would just be a field strip change. So let me go ahead and show you the takedown procedure on this gun, which is a little unique, but it's not difficult. Okay, the first thing you would do, of course, is verify that you do have an unloaded weapon. And we do. And then you would lower the hammer. Of course, if we do that, you have to have it on safe, hold the hammer, let it down, and then pull it back one click to like a half-cock position. And at that point, you can now begin the disassembly process. There's a button here you push, and you can push it with your finger, and that releases a locking pin. And then on the other side, you rotate this arm down, and when you do, the barrel's actually going to pop free under spring tension. So the one way I've found to do it is to push with this finger, so I can wrap my fingers around the barrel and kind of control that so it doesn't just fly off and roll across the table. And you saw the barrel pop forward, now there's a gap here. At this point I can then slide the barrel off. The slide also wants to come loose, and now I have the barrel assembly. I'm going to set that aside. You'll see there's a notch right here that it fits in the slide. Now that the barrel's off, I can remove the slide, and the recoil spring assembly fell into my hand. So as you get used to doing this, there's the strategic positioning of your hands will help catch things that are going to fall off it as it comes apart. And then go ahead and pull the piston out. Do it now rather than letting it fall out and roll across the floor, because of course it will always find the exact dead center of the table that it rolls under. That's just Murphy's Law. So let me walk you through a few of the parts. So I've got the slide itself, and you can see the bolt is an AR-15 style bolt. It really does look a lot like an AR-15 bolt. It isn't truly an AR-15 bolt, but it has that look and feel to it. And it's a big fat bolt. And it's got a few interesting features. It does have multiple locking lugs, and it has this little piston here that prevents the bolt from rotating until the piston's compressed. And this piston compresses on the body of the barrel as it comes in. So if I push this down a little bit, then I can rotate the barrel. And as I rotate the barrel, it'll go into locking. So what this ensures is that the bolt does, I said rotate the barrel, I meant rotate the bolt. It ensures that the bolt is perfectly straight as the gun is closing and doesn't allow it to rotate until the moment that it's clear enough of the lugs that it can actually lock up. So it improves the reliability and prevents it from getting a little bit rotated and causing the gun to not close. This has been a reliable gun with the rounds we've put through it. And for the most part, what I hear about these guns is they are fairly reliable as far as working, doing what they're supposed to. Here's a dual recoil spring assembly. There's a little hook on here that catches on the piston, and it's part of the gas-operated mechanism, which I'll show you that when I pick up the barrel. This is a little unique in pistols in that it's truly a gas-operated gun, similar to like a AR-15, except that it's piston-driven. This is the barrel, and right down here is the piston cavity. So the piston goes into here, which is that piston right here that I took off the front of the gun. And there's a gas port, which is going to be impossible to see. But right at the beginning, at the end of the chamber, beginning of the barrel, there's what looks like a defect, and you really probably won't be able to see it on the video. And I don't even know if I'll be able to point it out with a pick, because everything in there is so shiny. But it's right... I can't get my pick in there. It's right about there. Just at the beginning of the barrel, right there, there's a little hole, and that's a gas port. And that gas port feeds gas down the length of this to this piston. And that's what actually cycles the gun, which is unusual. Most are either blowback or some variation of recoil operation as opposed to gas operation. It's a fairly reliable system, and it does keep the bolt and everything fairly clean because all the gas and dirt is up here. And by the time the gun actually opens, the pressures are fairly low at that point, so you don't get a lot of blowback into the gun itself. The barrel itself, of course 50 caliber, that's a big hole to look at. That's not a view that you really want to see. And this profile here is one of the characteristics of the Desert Eagle, is that fat bottom. And that's, of course, to make room for that gas system and the recoil springs. But it does make for a characteristic, well-known look. A few of the other things on it are you have the locking lugs that hold the barrel in place. And again, this is a fixed barrel, so once the barrel's in, it's locked in position. The Picatinny rail, and then the sights that I mentioned earlier. So let me go ahead and move on to the frame. So here's the frame, and this particular version is an alloy frame. They also do have them available with steel frames. The alloy frame takes roughly a half pound, maybe a little bit more off the gun, but doesn't really detract from the reliability because it's such a large and robust frame. These are the rails. They go all the way front to back. There's a little relief cut on each side right in the middle, but it's still part of the rail. So really long and really thick rails. When you first look at it, it looks like it might be just the side of something, but it's actually, these are the rails. And if I flip it over, you've got the same thing on the other side. All whole length here is your rail. And of course, this is the Picatinny side. So the Picatinny rail is underneath here. Fairly simple, clean, there's not much going on in here. You got the fire control group at the back. You have the other half of the feed ramp. And on the barrel, let me pick the barrel up for a moment. Because this is more of an AR-15 style barrel, the feed ramp really is here, and it feeds almost straight in. And then the bolt slides into those lugs and locks up. And of course you've got a very large beaver tail. Now I did mention this is similar in profile to a 1911, but it does not have the grip safety like a 1911 does. So it's not actually just a big 1911, but it does that profile and that look of the 1911. And it does have a slightly flared magwell, which is kind of odd, competition style feature on a gun that you definitely would not be using for competition. This gun, if you were going to use this, it's more for collecting it, where's I've got mine, where's yours kind of thing. It also could be used for dangerous game, bears, hogs, things like that. It's a little bit unwieldy, but it would definitely see to any business you need to take care of with a large dangerous animal like that. And then there's the other side of the frame. It seems to be well constructed, well machined. I haven't found any burrs or defects on any parts of it. Overall, it's well put together, which you would expect for a gun that retails around $2,000 MSRP, even though you could very likely find them online and at various places at significantly less than that. So let's go ahead and I will put the gun back together and then show you from there a few more details about it. Okay, reassembly on this is a little different than you're used to, but it's not difficult. It starts with the slide itself and this piston that I referred to. It's got a little notch cut in it, right there. You see it as I rotate it by my finger, there's a notch cut in it. You put it in there with that notch lined up with the hole. You can see that's wrong, that's right, and it kind of makes an oval shaped hole. And then you take the recoil spring assembly, and it's got a little protrusion on it that fits into that hole. And you put that in place and just kind of hold it with your finger. So now you've got the recoil springs just kind of hanging there. Then the easiest way to do this is with the frame upside down. Line it up with the guides and slide it into place. If you line it up correctly, of course, it'll go in a little bit easier. And you may need to tweak those recoil springs to get them to clear. And then as they clear, the slide will come most of the way down. Now there's two things you need to do. One, you'll see that the recoil springs are kind of cockeyed. Way up here at the beginning, at the front of the, right here, there's two little notches they fit in. So you would use your fingers to line them up. And there's also this you have to push down to push the slide back. So one of the things you're finding with this gun is there's a lot of three-handed operations with this gun. So I'm going to push down on this, let the slide come back, and then I'm going to wiggle those. And you saw it just kind of move. That was the point where everything aligned. So at this point I have the slide on, recoil springs are in place, they're lined up with the two little notches that they need to be lined up with, and the slide is all the way at the back. The next step is to take the barrel, line these lugs up with these two notches, and drop the barrel in, and the gun will partially close. Now the last step is another 2 to 3-handed operation. I'm going to push the barrel all the way back, and when I have it back, I'm going to hold it back, I'm going to flip the release lever. So what I was doing is I was putting tension on it, and then with my thumb I reached to flick this lever. And now the gun is fully reassembled and cycles. So now we have a reassembled, ready to party Desert Eagle. There's a few more stats we want to talk about now that I've got it all together. It's 10.75 inches front to back if you count, the beaver tail. So the entire length of it front to back. It's 6 inches tall, and the slide is 1.26 inches. Now if you go all the way out to the ears of the safeties, you come out to 1 3/4 inches. So it's just big. Every dimension is big. Strangely, the height isn't a whole lot bigger than a lot of guns, but the length is definitely. And it weighs 58.8 ounces. So you've got almost 4 pounds of gun here. Not quite, but pretty close to it. You load this thing up with the 50 AE and it definitely grows some weight. Well, let me talk about the trigger a little bit and then show you a couple other guns just for size comparison purposes. This really isn't comparable to any other gun, but just to give you kind of a size perspective. So the trigger on this we found to be relatively light, fairly short. There was a little bit of grittiness in the take-up, but I think that'll just even out with a few rounds downrange. And I couldn't find anything in the manual about dry fire on this, so I'm going to assume you can't. So as I pull the trigger to demonstrate it, I'm going to restrain the hammer with my finger. And of course 50 AE snap caps aren't readily available. But this is the take-up. So you have a little bit of take-up, and then there was a little bit of creep. So it's creeping, 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 and then it just broke right there. So I'll do that again. A little bit of take-up, a little bit of creep, and then it just broke. So it's a fairly short trigger, and that creep just had a little bit of grit in it, but it didn't really affect us at the range. We noticed it more at the range because especially with these sights, you're focusing on trying to keep it on target. But it was actually a surprisingly nice trigger. A little bit closer to what you would expect from a 1911 single action, because of course this is a single action only gun. So let me pull out a couple different guns just for size comparison, just to kind of give you a relative size of this thing. So we'll start with this. This little SIG P238 doesn't really even reach past the trigger guard. It's another hammer-fired, single-action, 1911, no grip safety style gun. So it's, operates in a similar manner, but just look how tiny that thing is. Now, let's get serious. We'll talk about something that's actually in that size class. We've got a Glock 40, which is chambered 10mm. And if I set them side by side, and the Glock 40 is a big gun. It's a tall gun, it's a long gun, it's the biggest one that Glock offers. And even with the red dot on it, the top of the red dot is still below the top of the slide in the Desert Eagle when they're both sitting up. It's just a massive gun by comparison. And the other thing I've got here is this 1911 government model. And we'll do the same comparison, we'll just set them up. And you can just see, and a 1911 is considered to be, a fairly large gun, a service weapon size. And starting to get into the largest that you can easily concealed carry, and it doesn't even reach past the slide, the end of the slide on the Desert Eagle. So it just gives a little bit of perspective. So overall, the gun was easy to shoot well. The recoil was comparable to maybe a 44 Magnum. It actually recoiled less than the 454 Cazul, even though they're roughly equivalent in power. Partially probably because of the muzzle brake and the weight of the gun. But shooting this with that brake and this heavier gun, you knew you fired something big, but it wasn't abusive, it wasn't sharp, and it really didn't beat you up. After you'd gone through a couple mags, we went through probably about 40 rounds with it, and we didn't feel beaten up at the end of the session. So there you go, Desert Eagle, a real interesting gun, and it's kind of just definitely unique. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and have a great day. Thank you.